Welcome to today's talk. We will be discussing the topic of drug development in clinical trials. In this video, we will be addressing what each individual needs to know about the process of clinical research and drug development. Irrespective of your field of life, whether you are a student, healthcare professional, a teacher, a lawyer, a governmental official, we will be presenting to you the basics of what you need to know about the different stages that are involved in clinical research. We are equally calling on governmental bodies to ensure they have the required and necessary systems in place and to remind them of their responsibility to contribute to global research and development, and also the advantages that this sector brings to the economy of a nation. So, friend, I know the process of drug development takes time.
That's right.
It costs a lot of money.
That's right.
And there are different stages involved. I want you to share with our viewers in brief the different stages that are involved. So where does it start? How does it unfold? And what is the end game?
Thank you, Stephen. As you said, it is important that we enlighten and inform persons among our viewers who do not trust and are not comfortable with the conduct of clinical trials with persons in that domain as a result of perhaps a negative narrative about clinical trials and sometimes social economic conditions as well as social cultural conditions that may favor or perhaps even support a negative attitude towards clinical trials in these countries and region, if you will. In the end, we hope, of course, to help our viewers, especially in the developing world, developing countries, understand and see what participating in a clinical trial, contrary to popular opinion in this region, are not only essential to drug development in general, but would most importantly lead to development of drugs that are efficient and safer for them as compared to drugs that were developed without subjects from their ethnic background. So that said, I would like to now give some basic information as to how drug development is conducted in general. So it's really basic, and we are speaking to people that are not from this field that just need a basic understanding as to what is happening in the process of drug development. So we are not talking to experts. So there are three major stages involved in the process of drug development. The first stage is the discovery and development stage. The second stage is the preclinical stage, and the third stage is the clinical trial stage. Now, in the first stage, the discovery and development stage, these are at this point up to 10,000 compounds are identified, and they are studied for their interaction, absorption, metabolism, which would include a breakdown and excretion of that particular those particular compounds. Some interaction with other drugs, so drug-drug interaction, which mode of administration of this particular compounds will be more suitable for the particular indication that they might be later tested for. The side effects of these particular compounds, whereby side effects is mostly a language used in the clinical trial side. In the development stage, in the labs, we talk about toxicity of these particular compounds, and most importantly as well, the researchers will be looking into how these particular compounds will affect gender, age, and the general genetics of their subjects or whatever they're studying it on. And then the second stage is the pre-clinical stage. Note, I mentioned that in the first stage, about 10,000 compounds are identified and screened. Out of those 10,000 compounds, only 2.5% of those compounds will make it to the preclinical stage. So we are talking about roughly 250 compounds that would make it to the preclinical stage. Now in the preclinical stage, the experiment goes on still, and as I mentioned, they are carried out by researchers in institutes and university clinics and you name it. So in this stage, they will be the researchers will be mimicking the atmosphere in which these drugs are going to be functioning. I mean the milieu. So for this purpose, they would make experiments in cells, cell culture, and then tissue culture, and to even get closer to the system that the drugs will be effective in, or the drugs will be working in, they will be making experiments with animals. Now we'll be having animal experiment, and the most popular animal used for experiment, as we know, are the mice. So and then the information will be gathered, and out of this 250 compounds that are being studied in the pre-clinical stage, only 5 of them will make it to the clinical stage, right? And in the clinical stage, this is where the drug will be studied in details in human. So we are going to talk about that, but it's important to understand that from the development and discovery stage down to the clinical trial stage, this will take approximately 12 years.
That's a long time.
That's a pretty long time till you get there, and a minimum of from 500 million to $1 billion will be spent in this process. And after all those 10,000 compound screened, only one of them would eventually get marketing approval to be used for patients or for a given indication. Now let's talk about the clinical trial stage, because we still have to give some information in this stage to our viewers. The clinical trial stage is consists of 4 major phases. And those of us in the clinical field, we actually see the clinical stage to consist of 3 major stages, because after the 3rd stage, you have approval, and the 4th phase is just marketing surveillance, which is also a very important part of clinical trials, so we should not discount that. So in the first phase in clinical trials, it's the drug will be introduced first time into humans, so that's why they call it first in human trial. And in this stage, the safety and those finding is the most important points and information that the involved investigators want to get out of this. Of course, that would include the sponsor and every other person. It is important to understand in this state that just about 20 to 80 healthy subjects are recruited to be a part of this experiment. This is important because at this stage, we do not know yet how this particular compound is interacting with the human system. So you want to be careful that you are not using patients that are already predisposed to other conditions, and then having side effects from the drug. Possible side effects might be detrimental to the patient. So that's the reason why in this stage we use healthy patients and not patients that are actually sick. Not healthy patients. Patients are not healthy, so healthy subjects. I mean, saying in that point. So, but it's also important here to understand that sometimes, even in this stage, we use patients, so people that are sick for that particular indication, and this is important, or this is allowed in the case where this particular compound is the only option that those patients have at all, at a short of ever getting cured or healed. So at this point, it's allowed that sick patients can also be included in the first stage. And this stage and phase, or this phase rather, will take several months to complete that. So after this stage, you move to this second phase, phase 2. And in the phase 2 clinical trial, it's more about the efficacy and side effects of that particular compound that has been investigated. And about 100 to 800 affected patients. So patients for that particular indication are included in the trial, and the trial will take up to 2 years to complete in general. So after this phase, you move to the third phase, phase 3, and in the phase 3, it's also about efficacy, effectiveness, and safety of this particular compound. And about 100 to 3,000 patients are recruited at this stage, and this stage will take up to a year to 4 years to complete. And it's also important to know that at this stage, at the end of this stage, the involved persons can apply for marketing authorization if the results gathered were positive and have significant advantages for the patients they've been used for. So after phase 3, the last phase is phase 4, and this phase is called the post-marketing or drug safety monitoring stage. From the phrase or the name, you already can understand that it's more or less a surveillance for side effects and that we are not captured during the clinical trial phase, because you can imagine the highest number of subjects included in phase 3 would be 3,000, and people or patients that are going to use this medication when it's been approved will be probably in the hundreds of thousands. So definitely there would be some side effects that we are missing that we could not catch during phase 1 to phase 3. So these side effects will be recorded here, and then this information will be included in the information we know about this particular compound, and this safety information will also be given out so that patients using them could know that these side effects could also occur when using that particular medication.
Friend, thank you very much for giving us this basic summary of the different stages that are involved in drug development. So you have seen how the careful processes that are being followed before a drug gets to the market. If you require a more detailed information, please reach out to us and stay tuned to upcoming. Thank you for listening. Please subscribe so that you are immediately informed each time a new video is published. Also, feel free to share the content of this video. Thank you once more for listening.
Thank you.